Hello, hello. Good evening, good afternoon. As usual, please let me know if you can see my screen, or if you can see me, if you can hear me. Let's make sure that we are staying in touch. We'll wait for a couple of minutes for everyone to join, and then we would start. Today, we would touch the pretty interesting topic, which is related to authentication in our application. I would briefly explain you what would happen, or what should happen in your code, and then I would show you which part of our application you should touch and what you should do. I would try to explain it to make it clear for all of you. And still no pluses. Please let me know. If there is something wrong, let me know. I also found the second desktop, so the issue that happened last time won't happen again. Actually, we have only 4 modules left. It's not much. Yeah, but I think the most interesting parts just coming on. Let me check. I may did something wrong. Why no one is reacting in the chat? Mhm. Okay. Anyway, I suppose we can start. And first of all, okay. So like this. Okay, so my name is Chelandon Kostikov, and I'm systems engineer at the EPAM. And today I'll briefly show you what we should do in the task number 7 from our course. And today we will talk about the authorization, which is quite crucial part of all of the applications, and which is good to have, and always good to make it properly. So do not to avoid the leakage of our information, of the necessary credentials, and so on. Actually, we would only briefly discuss the hands-on task, and I would shortly try to explain you what would happen inside in our application when we implement all what is necessary in the task number 7. So, as you can see in the schema, we would implement only one Lambda function. But this Lambda function would be responsible for all of the requests we would create to the API gateway. So in our API gateway, let's say, would be secured by this Lambda. So all of the requests, first of all, should be authorized with this Lambda function, and only then this request would be processed by another Lambda. And I suppose now maybe first we can take a look at what we should do in the code. And in parallel, I would try to show you on the schema. Yeah, let's take a glance on the schema. What should happen? So as you can see, there is all the elements, all the services at the AWS, and not only, what would be participated in the importation of our products from the CSV file to the DynamoDB. Okay, there's already a question. This Lambda will hold for any requests for this API gateway. Yeah, actually, it's exactly what would happen. And we would take a look at this in the code. So I will try to show you, and on which step we implemented such an authentication for in our processes. Okay, so first of all, we have a user, and this user just want to upload the file on our web application. In this case, this user just going to in our web page, clicking on the upload image, and then CloudFront, or let's say the front end part of our application, is making a decision. And inside the front end, we described what all of the requests for this endpoint should be redirected to the API gateway, API gateway, which is responsible for importing the file. And as we can, okay, let me maybe already show you how it happened, how it looks like on the in the code. So it's authorization service. Nope, it should be in the import service. Yeah, here we go. So and here is we're saying to the API gateway, okay, all of the requests to this endpoint should be authorized first. And all of them should be authorized with the Lambda function, which we actually create. So now API gateway knows whatever he is invoked, he should call the Lambda function to authenticate this request. Let's take a look once again at the schema. So now we are talking about the API gateway, and the API, whenever API gateway getting this request, he's saying, okay, so this is a request, but I should first authorize it. And he would take the token which have been provided from the front-end part, and he would try to compare it with the existing token in his database. So in this case, it would be just local storage inside in our web application. And this authorization Lambda function would just compare the provided token from the front-end part with the existing one at the Lambda function environment variable. And if this Lambda function succeed with this, it will just create the necessary policies for the Lambda function triggered next. So which is linked to this special endpoint. In our case, it's the file importing. So this Lambda just takes the provided token, tries to compare it with the one at the environment variables from itself, and if everything looks good, she just triggers another Lambda function, which is actually responsible to just do what it should do. So just to import this file and upload it to the S3. Yeah, here's on the schema, I showed it like it instantly uploading something in the DynamoDB, but actually, yeah, it just uploads this file to the S3 bucket, and another function is responsible to process this file. So yeah, maybe not enough clear, but still, we just need to understand what any requests we are creating against the API gateway inside the import service stack should be authorized first. Without the authorization, we would give you any kind of errors. So in my case, it was just 500 before I figured out what's wrong with my function. So now let me show you what the changes we should do for in our stacks. let me share my screen. Okay, so I suppose we would first start from the front end part, because in this task we should make some changes in it. Mm, yeah, nothing should be done in the API paths. It just was my mistake where I accidentally deleted the step. So let's go straight to the CSV file import. We've already made the changes in this file when we've created the endpoint to import the file. It was, I think, the task number 5. But now we should just create the header for this endpoint. And this header should contain the authorization key, and inside the value, it should be basic and the value of the token, which in our example should be stored inside the local storage of our web page. So this is why I just added the header inside of this one. And I think that's it in the part of the front end. Yeah, so whenever all the changes are done, we need just to update in our front page. Question, where the token should be requested. I haven't fully understood the question, but maybe the answer is I think it should be requested in the front end side. So whenever we are making the request to get the, whenever we are creating the GET request to get the signed URL to upload in our file to the S3 bucket, we should provide the this authorization token. It would be necessary because with this exact authorization token, we would go to the authorization lambda, and this lambda would actually compare this provided with the existing tokens. So to make sure they exist in both environments, and we can proceed and to be authorized. Okay, once we are done with the front end, as I said, we should just update the deployment, and that's it. Now, I suppose we would go to the new stack of in our application, which we should create at the task number 7, and it's related the authorization itself. So in this stack, there should be just one Lambda function, just one. We don't need to create API gateway for this one because it's already created in the import service. We should just attach in our we should just attach the authorization logic inside this API gateway, but we would do it in the import service stack. So for now, it's just the stack for one Lambda function. Let's take a look at what it should do. So first of all, it should contain the environment variable, which should consist from your, as I remember, it should be login for GitHub or your nickname at the GitHub, and plus secret key, which in our case should be just password something. Nope. Let me take a look. Oh yeah, it's inside the .env. It should be just test password. And as for the task, we should upload this environment variable with the .env package in the Python. In case of Python, it's just .env. Yeah, just .env library. So what did it do? It just taken the .env file and uploading all of the variables inside this file as an environment variables for your environment. So in my case, it just takes this file and provides the data, upload this data inside my environment variable, and then I'm getting this environment variable inside my Lambda function. This is, you can see in here. So environment variable, login as my login for GitHub, and secret key as the environment variable, which is takes from this file. When we're just creating the Lambda function. And as I said, this Lambda function is just responsible to compare the provided authorization token with the one which is already exists as environment variable inside this Lambda functions environment. So, and just for these purposes, we've imported this these environment variables inside it. It just tries to decode the provided token, stripping it to make sure I just had an issue where I had white spaces, which is not which should be excluded from the value of these variables, and it just compares it. If everything is okay and the password is and the provided token is exists in the environment variables of this Lambda function, it generates the policy which is necessary to invoke to make the import Lambda be invoked. Maybe a bit later, when I will show you the AWS console, we will try to take a look at how this policy looks like, because from this code, it doesn't much, it's not clear enough, I think. So yeah, actually, that's it. It just makes sure that everything is in place. So when all of the parts of the tokens are similar inside the Lambda and a provided one. And in case of success, it just generates a policy. And I think that's it from the perspective of this stack. Now let's move on to the import stack. Is it it? Yeah, it's it. Okay. What should be done here? So first of all, we should instantiate the Lambda function which we are created in this stack. In the Python, we can do it just with the Lambda name. So in my case, I just created the Lambda function, which is named out function. And now I can instantiate it to make the necessary endpoints for this API gateway. So now I have it inside. I have all the necessary information for this Lambda function inside of this stack. And I can just say to the API gateway, hey, I want this endpoint to be, first of all, before you trigger the import Lambda function, I want it to be authorized, this request to be authorized. And this is what I'm saying. First, I'm instantiating this Lambda function. When I'm going, when I'm saying what this API gateway should authorize all of the requests. And actually, that's it. So yeah, by this block, I'm just saying, but all of the requests to this API gateway should be authorized with this Lambda function, basic authorizer Lambda, which is I just instantiated in this stack, but actually it's been created in the authorization stack. I'm not sure if it's the same in the other languages, but I think yes, because we are still working with the CDK, which is actually the wrapper above the AWS APIs. Once we are done, I think that's actually it from the perspective of the code. Well, why did I make the changes in here? Okay, yeah, I think just because I changed it to, yeah, I changed it to another logic. So if you remember, last time I just created the CSV file, which already consists of the products ID. So now I just created, these IDs inside the Lambda function. Actually, that's it. So now I suppose we can go ahead to the AWS console. Here we go. And what I want to show you, I think, is how this policy should look like. So in this case, we can just say, okay, let's say policy. Oh, it's not necessary. And return policy. And before you return it, let's print them. let's just print this policy. I think just enough. Okay, now let's go ahead to my web page and try to upload something. Let me choose the, oh, where is it? It should be my .csv. Yeah. Okay, now let's just upload the file. Looks like it's done. Now let's go ahead to the monitoring and to the CloudWatch logs of this Lambda function. Okay. And yeah, it's 320. Here we go. I think it should be this one. Yeah, it's not cute enough. Let's try to upload it in here. Or with the beauty. Oh, no, unfortunately. Okay, let's just try to find out what's happening here. So first of all, the principal ID. I'm not sure about this one because in my case, it's just informative because it's the login of the user, which I'm using to reach, to authenticate against this Lambda function. And inside it, we have the policy document, which is just a version of the policy and the statement. What can we do? So we just can activate or execute the API. And this statement, or let's say this policy, is enough for in our API gateway um, to activate the Lambda function, which is responsible for this kind of requests. So if you remember, we still have the same endpoint. It doesn't change the endpoint itself. We just we just added the in our authentication layer for this endpoint. And with this policy, we are saying to in our API gateway, so hey, okay, you have all the necessary policies, and what you can do, you can just run the necessary Lambda function, which is responsible just to take, not take, but it is just responsible to create the signed URL for necessary bucket to upload the R file. Actually, that's it. Now let's maybe quickly take a look at what should we do on how can the make the local storage entry for an hour value. So in this case, it's just base64 encoded my login and password. We can make sure. We can make sure about it. Oh, it should be base64. Okay, let's do it like this. Let's go to the base64, the code. Yeah, here we go. And do just the code. So as you can see, it's just base64 encoded my login and test password, which I uploaded to the local storage. So as I said, in our front end part of our application, as you may see in here, it just goes to the local storage and trying to get the item which is named authorization token. This is exactly what it looks like inside of my web page. So I just created the I'm not sure if there is the history stored. Yeah, it's stored. So I just set the item with the key of authorization token as for an our task, and with the value of encoded login and password. That's it. So in our front-end part, we'll go to the local storage and would try to authenticate against the Lambda function with these exact credentials. And what in our Lambda function would do with them? It would just go to the environment variables. It would just find the stored password. not in here, decoded credentials. It would be provided one. Yeah, so in this case, yeah, it's just stored password. So we are just going to the environment variables of the Lambda function, trying to find the data inside of them, and trying to compare it with the provided one from the local storage. So now we are just comparing the local storage credentials with the one which is stored inside the environment variables of the Lambda functions. And in case we are succeed, that's it. So at the rest of this workflow, everything works as it worked in the task number 6. And I think that's it. We are just creating the policy and making it possible to make to call the Lambda function, which is responsible to invert to create the signed URL for uploading the file. Yeah, I think that's it. Any questions? Okay. Oh, there's the one. Basically, if you push that env to the GitHub, so we should remind that env to sum over and write the documentation. It's not a good idea, actually, yeah, to put just any credentials inside the inside our GitHub repository. So this is why we can just store. Okay, let's say like this. Let me show my screen once again. So whenever I'm deploying this stack, I'm deploying it right from my PC. And what happens in here, so whenever this stack is created and whenever this Lambda function is created, my PC is just responsible to take a look at this .env file, take all the necessary data, and provide this data and use this data to create this Lambda function. And actually, that's it. So to not to store this .env file, we can just create the .gitignore file. I already actually have one. Yeah, and we can just add the .env, and that's it. In this case, this file won't be uploaded in our GitHub repository. Actually, it would be uploaded only in case if we would forcefully add it inside inside our scope of our repository. But otherwise, it would just stay in here and, let's say, invisible in our repository. And all the data is used just once, just whenever our Lambda function has been created. Lambda is not for user authorization, but for any action authorization came from front end. Actually, yes. To implement the user authorization, we should go a bit further. And as I remember, as for the task number 7, it's not necessary, but it's hardly recommended to try to implement the Cognito authorization for this application. And actually, at the real-life environment, let me try to find my schema once again. I think I have one in the uploaded. Yeah, hope you can see it. So in case it would be the real production environment, I think we would like to make the authorization for our web page. What does it mean? I think all of you have experience to work with such web pages where you need to authenticate before do something. So you should prove what you are, who you saying you are. And to prove this web page that you have all the necessary permissions to, first of all, maybe log into your page and do the necessary stuff. So in this case, we are just using the login page, where usually we are prompted to tell the username and password and maybe MFA or some SMS or OTP secondary authentication. For such a cases, there is the Cognito service at AWS, which is actually responsible to store all the users' data, and actually maybe not store, but maybe you can just create a user, but this user may be authenticated with the some third-party authorizational tools like the Google Authenticator or just the Google account or something like this. Um, in such cases, Cognito is just a place where your front-end application would go with the. Okay, yeah. Let's start from let's start from the start. So you're just going to your web page. You're clicking on log in. And whenever you are prompted to enter the login and password, it's a good idea and actually best practice to first of all redirect you to another page, to another, let's say, server or service, which would be just responsible for such a thing, which is authentication. And when you provide your credentials to this page, to this authentication page, it would go to the authentication server and try to verify these credentials. And if it succeeds, this authentication server would give just the token to your, not your front end part, but your authenticational front end part. So authentication front end part is just another service, and it's actually usually run on another machine. And as I remember, there is such a service inside the Cognito. So you can not create your own authorizational page, but try to use some from the Cognito part. And whenever you get in this token usually stored inside the cookie or inside the local storage of your machine, and it have some TTL, so time to live. And while this time to live is not expired, you can make all the necessary calls using this token as an authorizational token. So this is how it would work inside the production environment. But in our case, we are not mocking actually, because we actually can use the Lambda authentication Lambda function. But maybe it's not the best idea to store the credentials inside the environment variables. Maybe it's better to store it in some kind of storages like DynamoDB, for example. But yeah, maybe it's still not the best idea. But it still have a chance to live. So in case you are not care much about your security. Any other questions, or everything's clear enough? Okay, so I think this is all I wanted to tell you today. I'm not sure you would find any difficulties in doing this task. Actually, it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, it's such a good experience to understand how authentication works inside the web applications. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience. And I think see you on the next weekend. On the next week, sorry. And yeah, have a good rest of the day. See ya. If you have any questions, so yeah, feel free to ask them inside the Discord channel as usual. And see you in the next week. Bye.